think we're all in attendance, those that were due to be in the chamber today and those who are online. And good morning to everybody, and good morning to Ben Yates from the Unison side. And we've got officers here this morning. We've got Ben Schwab and Belinda Collins, Head of HR, and we've got Anna. Good, so we've got a full team. If we can have authorisation for me, please, to sign the minutes of the last two Human Resources meetings on the 23rd of February 26 and the 18th of May 26. Thank you very much. Those all in agreement. Excellent. Thanks very much indeed. Have we have any apologies, please?
I've not received any, Chair, but obviously Councillor Cooper's not here, so if she doesn't attend remotely, I'll give her apologies formally.
Thank you. No substitutes. Additional agenda items?
No, there's none, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosures of interest and dispensations. To receive any disclosures by members of disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests, non-registrable interests in matters on the agenda, the nature of any interest and details of any dispensations obtained. Members are reminded of the need to repeat their declaration immediately prior to the commencement of the item in question. So today's agenda item is the review and approval of human resources policies. This report will be presented by the HR manager along with Sam, who will go through the various parts of the report. So there's a fair amount of reading that went with this, so Sam will cut through a lot of that, I know. But it is important that from a council point of view, we bring our HR policies up to speed, bearing in mind that if it will happen or not happen with LGR, we are going to be where we need to be. So I'll hand over to Belinda, if I may, to present the report, and then for Sam to go through and take any questions, I'm sure. Thank you, Belinda.
So the first item is the recruitment, selection and retention policy and procedures. And the policy sets out the full framework for recruitment and retention activity, from reviewing a vacancy and obtaining moratorium approval through to advertising, shortlisting, interviewing, pre-employment checks, onboarding, probation and retention measures. The overall emphasis is on fairness, legal compliance, stronger governance, safer recruitment and a more consistent approach to recruitment decisions across the council. And that's the summary of the policy. Obviously there's a lot more detail.
Yeah. Were there any points in the policy that came out that anyone had any queries on for the recruitment retention policy? There's not too much that's been changed from our previous recruitment policy. It's just, as Belinda said, sort of strengthened all the controls around it, and hopefully will streamline the process a bit more. We've sort of been working on getting the onboarding a lot quicker, and I think it has improved in the last sort of year or so. So yeah, hopefully this will also help. There's a lot more guidance and everything, as with all the other policies that we've done, for managers to help self-serve and things like that. So hopefully this will be a lot more informative than what we had before.
Thank you, Sam. And I think that this has all been in communications with Unison in order for them to be fully aware of what the policy changes are and the implications there. And I believe that there were some points raised which have been clarified and also incorporated into the policy from staff side. Did you want to add anything, Ben, to that?
Well, thank you, Chair. As you said, yeah, Unison were consulted on these draft policies, as we were with the last suite of policies that came forward, and as officers in the room know, we are incredibly thankful for that early sight and work that we've done with HR. So, as you said, we raised a host of comments, and yeah, most of those had been incorporated, and where they hadn't been incorporated, Sam and Belinda had provided the rationale for why those comments weren't included, and generally for most of these policies it comes down to operational or legal compliance reasons. So I think on this policy we're fairly content that, yeah, it's workable and good for us.
Well, I think that's very reassuring for members. Did you have a question, Christine?
Yes, I did. And I've already spoken to Belinda, and probably the questions that I'm going to raise are going to be, the answer's going to be in other policies, which will be obviously coming forward over a period of time. But I just wondered about flexible working and working from home, because I don't know what our rules are, but I mean, if you join the civil service these days, you've got to be, they're saying that you've got to be in the office 60% of the time, which I think probably works out as 3 days a week and 2 days working from home. How is that dealt with in the recruitment policy? And do we have a hard and fast sort of percentage rule that we're applying currently? Because it's really important, I think, that we try and get back to normal working as much as possible, but with some flexibility if necessary.
Thank you. Yeah, so in the last HR committee, we did put through our hybrid working policy, which was approved. That is still not been fully implemented because we're still working on the space planning with the estates team, just to make sure that there's enough desk space and everything for everybody to be able to come in. The percentages that we've set in there's 20% for staff and 40% for managers. So that does work out 1 day a week in the office. But there's scope to move that. It's flexible. It's not hard and fast. That would be the minimum that we would expect would be 20% and 40% from managers. But as I say, we need the estates team to finish their space planning work, so we make sure that there are desks for people if we're asking them to come in, so that they do have somewhere to work. So that's not been implemented yet. It's approved and ready to go, but not implemented.
Can I just add to that as well? It does say in that policy that where staff are new or they need particular additional support, then the manager would have to increase their hours in the office to ensure that those situations are covered.
Sorry, can I just, this is my first ever HR committee, so do excuse me for perhaps not being completely up to speed on this. I mean, that seems very low, 20% and 40%. Is there, when will that be reviewed?
Well, at the moment, we are reviewing policies very regularly because the Employment Rights Act has introduced a range of changes, so we're having to monitor all the policies. But I think we will be reviewing everything next year, assuming that LGR goes ahead, because we will need to be ensuring that we're fully compliant, and by that time we will know what other authorities are doing. I mean, we're not going to be changing things because of the transfer, but we want to make sure that we're in line up to a point, but also to make sure that it works for the council. Parking and accommodation are critical to making those decisions about working office space time.
That's okay, Christine, you've covered that. Yep, good, okay. Councillor Delaney, Gareth?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that, I probably am more supportive of the, that as a policy, the minimum amounts, 20%, 40%. But with the caveats that, particularly for new staff or staff that don't have the space at home to be able to work for that length of time, that they're able to come in. So if somebody requests to come in, that we are able to accommodate that. But I think the principle of where possible and where staff are comfortable working from home is a good thing. So I would definitely support the policy, in its as it's implemented.
Did you want to add something, Anna?
Yes, if that's okay. I would say, yes, we absolutely do support people who want to come in every day, either because they don't have a stable internet connection at home or, things like that. And in reality, a lot of people come in a lot more often than the minimum. On my team in particular, we have people that come in every day. And I think on planning, housing, revenues and benefits, people do come in a lot more. But as you said, they are just the minimums.
Thank you. Eleanor, Councillor Eleanor Kirby-Green, morning.
Thank you. Morning. Thank you. I wanted to echo Christine's comments, actually. I mean, I'm amazed that the minimum is 20%. And certainly for new employees, I mean, they shouldn't be working from home at all, in my view, for a certain amount of time. And this will probably be against all the union views. But I think the key thing here is, though, if they are, there has to be tighter management. I mean, that's really key. You need to manage people if they're working from home. And I'd like to think that we've got robust performance management. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute everyone is, but we do have, not Rother, but there are cases where when people are working from home, if they're not closely monitored, there are issues. We've had people who've had 2 jobs and things like, I'm aware in the local area people have had 2 jobs. So I think we just really need to be much hotter on performance management. But I would echo Christine's view. I think 20% is really low, and even for the managers. And the other thing I would just say is that I have heard from residents since COVID, it is extremely difficult to get hold of officers. And I know there is one officer particularly who said to me, I can't pick up voicemails when I'm from home. So I suggest he spoke to IT. But, if we've got situations where people are working from home and they can't pick up voicemails, that is a serious issue because taxpayers are paying these people's salaries. And so I sound really harsh, but I just feel that we as an organisation needs to ensure that I've got no issue with working from home, but we need to ensure that it has no detrimental impact on the services we are delivering.
Yeah, thanks for those points. I'll invite Lorna perhaps to have a response.
Thank you, Chair. This is a policy that we've already adopted, so this isn't on the agenda today. I do think it's relevant for the recruitment policy, though, in the sense that actually this is a big issue for people. For harder to reach posts, they know that kind of minimum of 20% in the office is probably realistic in the market, particularly for those professional services that we're in competition to perhaps other employers that are working completely from home. So it has been really, really well thought through. But I think there's the policy, and then there's what's actually happening in reality. And as Anna says, actually, people are coming in more often than that. Managers, through the policies that we're developing, through things like the Managers Forum, will, be absolutely trying to get the best out of their teams, and the performance management policy is absolutely trying to do that. So, don't see it as a kind of detriment of service. This is absolutely how managers are managing their teams and getting the most out of them. So, and the other thing I'd say about new starters, absolutely they're in the office 100% of the time when that happens. How else do they learn on the job? So it is kind of a minimum kind of level. A lot of engagement happened with staff through the colleague engagement group and Unison to get to the point of that policy. And I think, as Belinda says, we're keeping things under review and making sure that they're actually working in practice. We don't seem to have any problems that have come out as kind of trends. There will always be issues with individual staff that need to be dealt with. But what we're able to do, because we've got better policies in place now, we've got a better resourced HR team, so we can keep a track better on the data and empowering our managers to manage better. I feel really confident that we've got the right approach on this. But as Belinda said, it's something that we need to make sure there's alignment going into the future. So, but it is actually, just to be clear, a policy that we adopted at the last meeting.
Thank you for that. Did you want to add anything, Eleanor?
No, the only other question I was going to ask Belinda, reference when we move to LGR, she'll be able to work out how we compare with other authorities. Do we not have that data now? Do we not know what Hastings, Eastbourne, Wilden, do we not have the data on their policies?
We've only relatively recently had such a strong HR forum of comparing what we're doing and sharing documents and guidance. It hasn't really happened before, from what I can gather. And that forum is very useful to understand, and we're sharing some of the things that we're doing because we're trying to adopt best practice, and alongside the policies, we are developing guidance and template letters, and there will be training for managers. So we are trying to give a robust package where everybody understands what it is we're trying to achieve. And we
Sorry, Belinda, it wasn't really that question. The question was, do we not know what their policies are on working from home?
only as far as it goes at the time, because other organisations have been changing their arrangements. As far as I'm aware, Wealdon are pretty much aligned with what we're doing. I don't know so much about Hastings, but we now have got direct links into all the organisations, and we are asking each other questions, and we are sharing documents and information.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Colleen, Teresa?
Yes, thank you. And Doug, I hope you got my note. I do apologise for not being there this morning, but problems with the car, as hopefully you saw my note too. Most people have covered what I wanted to say. Really, within my previous life, we did a lot of homeworking, but it demanded an awful lot of managers. So a lot of the work we did was on ensuring that managers were trained to be able to cope with the sort of home working as well as in office working. So I think it demands a lot of managers, but as long as your performance management's in place and it doesn't have an impact on the business, then yes, I feel reassured that it's going forward. And I know from planning that as Anna said, a lot of the departments spend many more days in the office than the minimum, and as long as it works with the business needs, then that seems fine. Thank you.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense on the basis that line managers must manage their productivity levels, and if there are any issues there, you would expect them to deal with it, so within the policies that we have. And we have come an awful long way from an HR point of view over these last 18 months, I suppose, since Belinda came here, and then, of course, she had absenteeism through an accident. But, the whole team have really come forward to a significant level of output, if you like, and bring us up to where we needed to be. So are you going to go through the probationary policy? Yeah. So we move on, Sam?
So when we've recruited somebody, obviously there's an induction process which we're improving, and then the probationary policy kicks in. Now, this policy provides a structured and supportive probation framework for new employees, built around induction, regular one-to-ones, a personal development plan and formal review points at weeks 5, 10, 15 and 20. We have reduced the probationary period to 20 weeks, and this is a direct reflection on the Employment Rights Act, which has changed, will change the legislation in January 2027, where unfair dismissal claims were 2 years. They're being brought to 6 months. So the 20-week probationary policy ensures that we can manage people out of the business if we have to, if we decide that they're not going to meet their probationary requirements, then we have that opportunity so that we don't then lead us straight into employment tribunal activity. The policy itself, though, is deliberately framed as a developmental process designed to help staff succeed rather than as a shortcut disciplinary or capability route. The induction will help. We want people to get to know each other and get to know the service and the building, because the more knowledge they have from the beginning, then the easier it is to work at the capacity that they are expected to.
Thank you. Are there any questions before Sam goes through? Sam?
As Belinda said, so this probationary policy is slightly different to our last one. It's focused more on induction support and supporting the staff through that probation process. Having the shorter time span on it does mean that will have to be managed very closely. So we will be giving training to managers when we introduce this policy to kind of make them aware of the changes and the fact that there's a few little tweaks to the probation reviews. But yeah, apart from that, it's not a huge change to what we had, just shortening the process and making it a bit more focused.
Thank you, Sam. Ben, any time you want to chip in, just, you may want to make any observation, please do. Grievance policies and procedures.
Thank you. Obviously, grievances do occur in the workplace, and this policy provides a fair, timely and consistent route for employees to raise workplace concerns with an emphasis on early resolution where appropriate, and that includes a very strong informal process at the beginning to help people resolve differences in a way that doesn't make it into a formal process. The formal process, if isn't necessary, is concerned with structured investigation and decision making, and we are in the process of writing an investigation review guidance document for staff and managers to understand what it is that happens during an investigation. The decision making is not in terms of the investigator. There will be a panel that will hear a grievance policy if that becomes necessary. But this process includes informal discussions, facilitated meetings where necessary and approved by all parties, mediation, but it's predicated on formal investigation, outcome meetings and an appeal process if it gets to the formal stage. Now, one of the critical things about grievances is what exactly is the outcome that's required, and that's what we need to focus on right at the beginning to see if we can resolve it before it becomes a formal process.
Thank you, Linda. Sam, did you
Just
want to add anything
yeah,
to
sorry,
that,
just
please?
to add, Ben's just reminded me, as part of the Unison reviews, there was something picked up on in the grievance policy, which was a route to appeal from the respondent to the grievance, which we just need to improve the appeal guidance, for the respondent to the grievance if they'd like to appeal it. So that is something that we do just need to update on the policy that you've got, the version. But as Belinda said, the main thing about the policy is to support early resolution where we can, but it does protect that access to sort of a formal route in more serious cases. So.
Thanks very much for that clarity. Are there any questions from anywhere? No? No, we move on to the next section, if we may then. That's Appendix D, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Policy.
The sexual harassment agenda has been included in the Employment Rights Act, and we have we're setting out that the Council has a zero tolerance approach to harassment. I mean, that applies to harassment and bullying generally, but this policy had to be included because of the changes in the Employment Rights Act, because it does make some specific changes to bolster the way that the employer treats sexual harassment, and also puts greater emphasis on third-party harassment. We are doing some guidance on that, and this already has a mandatory IHASCO training programme, and we have checked with them that they are going to upgrade the training in light of the changes within the Employment Rights Act. So it's designed as a standalone policy rather than relying only on a broader conduct or dignity at work arrangement, but we did agree a dignity at work policy at the last meeting.
Thank you for that. Sam, did you want to add anything?
I haven't got anything to add, no, thank you.
Any questions or points, comments? No? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next policy, Capability Policy and Procedures, Appendix E. Belinda?
Yeah. Capability, this particular policy is designed to deal with situations at work where somebody is underperforming. You know, we talked earlier about flexible working and working from home and managers managing situations. Well, this is about managing people that are underperforming, and again, there will be guidance and training provided. And it provides a staged and supportive process for dealing with poor performance, particularly in the early stages where we will be asking people, why are they underperforming? Are there things that are going on that we're unaware of? And to provide a framework that enables people to work to their highest capability. So the informal stage is very much about identifying what the blockages are. Then it gets a bit more serious, and at stage 2 we'll be introducing improvement plans and review periods. And then ultimately, if somebody cannot perform their role, it may come to a dismissal hearing, which would also have the right of an appeal.
Thank you. Sam?
Nothing else to add,
Nothing to
thank
add? Are there any questions or comments? Christine?
Yes, and I've spoken to Belinda about this just before the meeting. I mean, for me, and I know this is coming up, and for me there is something about making sure that everybody working in the council has their objectives set out, and that these flow down from the chief executive's key performance indicators that we set on that panel. So I understand that there is another policy coming to this committee to deal, you know, to specifically deal with that. But I would have liked to have seen a sort of strengthening, if you like, on introduction in 1.1, which talks about, where it talks to perform their duties satisfactorily, if you like, to something, beef that up so that it then relates to those objectives, those key objectives that are set. And I'm sure Unison rep would agree with that, because it's for every member of staff, it's really, really important that they know what's expected of them. And sometimes you have to have that set out in black and white, what you're measuring, what you're performing against. And again, on the following 3.1 key principles, it says, you know, these performance standard accepted from them. Again, I would like to see a reference there, if you like, to the more formal, you know, because you know, it doesn't matter how high performing or if there's concern about a member of staff's performance, everybody should be, you know, everyone can make improvements the way that they do their job, and everybody should have, you know, appraisal meetings, if you like, where they're discussing what they're expected to do, what their desires are in terms of promotion, what their needs are in terms of, you know, pushing out the boundaries of what they want to do. So every member of staff should have that sort of basics. And I know that we've discussed this in the past, and it's not been particularly the culture of the district council to have that. But I know one of the things I think when I leave this council that we really have embedded that culture, and that is embedded in the unitary authority going forward. So I would have just liked to have seen a little bit more, if you like, a bit more clarity about where it sort of says, where it refers to the standards, that we also talk about those, you know, person's objective. And I know the policy's coming forward, but rather than go backwards and amend this, I'd like to see it.
Well, I think we can make reference to that in this policy. We can make it more explicit.
Yeah.
But we have got the appraisal process going on, and it is cascading down through the organisation, and it looks back at what they've achieved in the last year, and it takes stock of the good things that people feel that they've carried out during that year, and then it looks forward to what the coming year is and what the targets are. And it also looks at the values and behaviours as well, because sometimes it's not the technical knowledge that causes issues, it's how people interact with each other. So I think it's quite a robust appraisal form, and more than happy to share that with you. Yeah, sorry, Lorna, did you?
I'll invite Lorna to make a comment, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is one thing that really came out of my appraisal, that we wanted to make sure that all appraisals were done across the council. We haven't achieved that until this year, where we are going to achieve it, that everybody has an appraisal, and it is just a basic that we need to make sure happens. But it links back to having a clear corporate plan that articulates what we're trying to achieve. We've got our Fit for the Future programme as well, which means that every member of staff has a hook to what's going on in the organisation. We've really reinvigorated the service planning process, so every individual understands how they fit into their service. And we've also reviewed the appraisal documentation itself. And as Belinda says, we're through that process at the moment. I think the deadline for that is the end of this month. Is that right? Something along those lines. And we will be going back and making sure that managers are undertaking all of those. And it is an opportunity to be really clear what the expectation from the authority is, from the council is, and also to identify those development needs, which is really important. So we do have a really robust sort of business planning process that links into the individual performance. And it is, I would say it's quite a tight process. I think some organisations have made it a bit looser. But because we didn't have, as you say, Christine, perhaps that performance culture in the past, we thought it was really important to make sure that those robust processes were in place. And although it is quite time consuming for some managers, it's definitely worthwhile. And you can't really go through a process like this and this policy that we're looking at here unless you're clear on what those expectations are and whether performance is or isn't measuring up to those expectations. So it's absolutely a vital part of the process. And I think we can link that back out to what I've just described in terms of how the appraisal process fits into all of this. Because it's evidence, isn't it, when you get to these kind of discussions, if you don't have those objectives, then you have nothing to fall back on. So it is a really important aspect of it.
Yes, I tend to agree. I think it's important that staff have ownership of what they're doing. There's expectations and also progression. You know, I think that's the important thing, that staff can see that there's a career progression for those that have the desire to do so. So I think it's important. But again, I would just continue to remind you, we've come an awful long way with our policies from where we were. So therefore, these will always be fine-tuned. And I think that we've now got the structure in our senior management team to be able to make sure that we adopt these comments. Cut you off then. I thought you were going to say something.
All I was going to say is we are also going to be undertaking a full staff survey shortly, which will also feed into this and capture the picture. But I think we've got a lot of good workers and a lot of people really enjoy coming to work. So we want to build on that. So I think, you know, having proper policies and procedures that kick in at the right time so that people don't get disaffected and we can sort out problems is really important.
Well, they all make a lot of sense. Did anyone else want to make any observations? No? Okay. So shall we move on? This Appendix E. We'll move on to F. Yes? EF.
So this is a bit of an unusual policy and procedure, but it does tighten up all the policies in relation to potential dismissals. Under the legislation, it's redundancy, capability, conduct. We won't include retirement because that's usually a voluntary kind of process. And then we have a catch-all SOSR where it doesn't fit neatly within all the other policies and procedures, but there is a real reason where the organisation might need to make a dismissal. And it's a route for rare and exceptional dismissal cases that don't fall properly under conduct, capability or redundancy. And it's explicitly framed as a tightly controlled and narrowly used category. It requires HR approval, and we would obviously have already briefed CLT to make a clear lawful basis and a substantial business justification with a documented consultation, any alternatives explored, and a fair hearing and appeal process. And although it might not be used very often, it sometimes does make the difference between managing a difficult dismissal in a way that allows the employee to leave with dignity and respect.
Thank you, Belinda. Are there any other comments? Did you want to add anything to this, Sam?
No,
Ben?
thank you, no.
No? Okay. So I think we've covered off the report. Can you just put your little light off, Ben? Unless you want to say something. So I think it's been a very interesting opportunity. We've got 3 new members to the to this panel, so I think it's important that we've gone through this and that there is the reference of the report. So, you know, we need the report to be approved. Be noted that once approved, these policies will replace existing historic policies currently published on the intranet, and the Head of Corporate Strategic and Neighbourhood Services, in consultation with Human Resources Manager, be authorised to make any minor non-material amendments prior to publication. And I think there have been some good points raised this morning, which no doubt will be incorporated into that. Christine, did you have something to add?
No, that's fine, as long as, if we can just pick up that point about...
I'm sure we would. I think that's the whole purpose of this. I think it's gone really well. Lorna, did you want to add anything? No? Can I have someone to move the... I'll move it. Thank you. And those in favour, a second, and those in favour. And that's unanimous. Thanks very much indeed. I think we could... the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ben, Sam and Belinda for joining us. For those online, nice to see you, Teresa. I hope your car's going to cost you too much to get it going.